Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. Pressure is mounting on key senators who will decide the fate of Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation. Congress received the FBI's report into sexual assault allegations against the Supreme Court nominee late Wednesday. And Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has secured a procedural vote for Friday. Now, undecided senators have to make their decisions. CBS News Chief Congressional correspondent Nancy Cortez is on Capitol Hill.
As demonstrators filled every floor of a Senate office building and marched to the Supreme Court, senators filed in and out of this secure room in the Capitol basement that's off limits to cameras and normally reserved for national security briefings. It's the only place they were allowed to view the 46-page FBI report delivered to Congress in the middle of the night.
There's no corroboration of Dr. Ford's allegations.
The investigation was a sham.
Republicans said the FBI did 9 interviews and could not back up Christine Blasey Ford's claim that Brett Kavanaugh pinned her down and groped her at a high school gathering.
Neither the Judiciary Committee nor the FBI could locate any third parties who can attest to any of these allegations.
There was nothing new, no further corroboration.
Democrats disputed that.
In plain English, what I just read, there are hints of misconduct.
The most notable part of this report is what's not in it.
She's referring to the fact that the FBI did not talk to Kavanaugh or Ford themselves. In a letter to the FBI director, Blasey Ford's lawyers called the investigation a stain on the process, listing a half-dozen people the FBI declined to interview, people who Ford told about the assault prior to Judge Kavanaugh's nomination.
In fact, it smacks of a whitewash.
Republicans insisted they did not tie the FBI's hands.
Can you explain to us how you came up with your list of who should be interviewed by the FBI?
The FBI was requested to conduct an investigation into any and all credible current accusations. The FBI made the decision from there as to who to interview.
I think we're going to get arrested.
Comedian Amy Schumer was among the hundreds detained by Capitol Police today after protesters unfurled giant banners in support of Blasey Ford. With the balance of the Supreme Court at stake, some protesters got more aggressive today.
Don't you wave your hand at me. I wave my hand at you. When you grow up.
Irritating their GOP targets.
If he would say a polygraph, it would all be over, Senator.
So why don't we dunk him in water and see if he floats?
Everyone looking for clues from the 4 remaining undecided senators, 3 Republicans and 1 Democrat. Susan Collins of Maine said today it appears to be a very thorough investigation. Arizona's Jeff Flake said it yielded no additional corroborating information for Ford's claim. Those comments left the president, traveling in Minneapolis, feeling bullish about Kavanaugh's chances.
I think he's doing very well. The judge is doing well.
Nancy Cortez joins me now from Capitol Hill. So, Nancy, what is the mood like where you are?
Well, it's been very tense all day, Elaine, and at this hour there are still protests here out on the grounds of the U.S. Capitol, and that's because this very key procedural vote is now about 12 to 15 hours away. We don't have an exact time, but Republican leaders say it's going to be held sometime Friday morning, and so the protesters who were inside Senate office buildings throughout the day and marching to the Supreme Court have now marched back, and they're gathering here. We're told that about 300 people were arrested in one Senate office building. And they have really gotten in the face of some Republican senators who in turn have gotten back in their faces. You know, these are Republican senators who have gotten, frankly, pretty frustrated with being tailed all week long by protesters anytime they go anywhere, anytime they do an interview, when they're walking from their offices to the Senate floor to vote. And so, you know, we've seen some outright hostility in both directions, and just a lot of bad feeling in general between Democrats and Republicans who, after all, read this same 46-page document today from the FBI and came away from it with completely different conclusions about what was in there and what should have been in there but wasn't.
Well, at this point, Nancy, do we know if Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is confident he has the votes he needs?
Well, he's certainly projecting a lot of outward confidence, and he is calling this vote tomorrow and vowing to hold a final vote on Saturday because he says it is time to bring this process to a close. We don't know for sure how this small handful of undecided senators is going to vote. But if you read the tea leaves, both Senator Susan Collins and Jeff Flake had positive things to say about the FBI investigation. They did not join Democrats who were railing against the fact that this investigation had been curtailed, that Blasey Ford and Kavanaugh weren't interviewed. Quite the opposite. They said it looked like a very thorough investigation. And in Flake's case, he said that it did not corroborate any of Blasey Ford's claims. So a lot of Republicans took that as a very good sign. On the other hand, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, who we didn't hear from today, spent a good portion of the day meeting with women, sexual assault victims in her office, hearing what they had to say. That was obviously a very deliberate choice on her part. And Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who is the fourth undecided senator, he said he still just doesn't know what he's going to do. In fact, he went in and read a lot of the document and then came out and said he hadn't had time to finish it and he was going to go back on Friday and do some more reading. So he is clearly wanting to cross every T and dot every I before he makes his decision. He's the only Democrat at this point who has not definitively said which way he's going to vote.
Nancy, back on the time frame for a moment. So you said Mitch McConnell is looking at Friday for the procedural vote. First of all, remind us what that entails, and also then a final vote sometime Saturday. Is there any more specific time frame?
No. So what he needs to do first is to hold this procedural vote that essentially cuts off debate on the nomination. That's going to take place sometime Friday morning. We don't have an exact time yet. And then typically the senators need to leave 30 hours. This is just the rules and procedures of the Senate between that vote and final confirmation. So let's say they vote on Friday morning at 9 a.m. That would then set them up to take a final vote on Saturday at 3 in the afternoon, 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So we don't have exact times, but what we can say right now is that it looks like they'd have this procedural vote on Friday morning and then a final confirmation vote Saturday afternoon or evening.
So many Democrats, as you know, are calling for the public to see the FBI investigation. Would that be realistic or even helpful at this point?
You know, it's interesting. There are Democrats and Republicans alike who think that this material should be made public. They think that this has all played out in the public eye. Why shouldn't the public have a right to see what the FBI uncovered, what those interviews looked like? And frankly, there are Republicans who say that it might help to clear Kavanaugh's name in the court of public opinion. Republicans said today that Senate rules prohibit them from releasing that document, but that there might be something the White House could do if it wanted to have that document released. I would guess, Elaine, that no one in the White House wants to do anything that might rock the boat, that might jeopardize this very fragile coalition that they have right now in favor of Kavanaugh. So if they do end up releasing either a summary or the entire report, they probably won't do it until after that confirmation vote.
And I realize, obviously, you cover the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue, but are there indications about how the White House is feeling now that the probe is actually wrapped up?
Well, they say that it was very thorough, that then they continue to insist that they didn't curtail the investigation, even though all the reporting that we have out of the FBI itself is that their hands were tied in some respects, and they were directed as to who they could talk to, who they couldn't talk to, and that's part of the reason that they actually finished up their probe in 6 days when they were granted 7, because at the end of the day, they only interviewed 9 people, despite what we now know are numerous other people who were knocking on the door, if you will, who were calling FBI tip lines saying that I have information I think you want to know, I'm a friend of Christine Blasey Ford, or I lived with Brett Kavanaugh and I want to tell you what I heard and when. And those people, most of them said that they never heard back from the FBI. The White House says that that is not a problem, that they wanted the FBI to look strictly at these two incidents that happened, one in high school, one in college, and they feel that the FBI spoke to the right people to get at the truth of those incidents. And obviously the lawyers for the two alleged victims have a very different view.
So finally, Nancy, the midterms are, of course, about a month away. Is there any talk from lawmakers about how this process as a whole is going to impact voters in November?
I think Democrats and Republicans alike would agree that this entire incident has energized Republican voters. You hear that universally from both sides, particularly in red districts. And so that could be problematic for, let's say, Democratic senators who are up for re-election in red states, like Heidi Heitkamp, who announced on Thursday that she is going to vote no, like Joe Manchin in West Virginia, like Joe Donnelly in Indiana. At the same time, they say that it has also energized particularly women, well-educated women, and women in the suburbs. So that is something that Democrats say could be helpful to certain candidates. So I think at the end of the day, Republicans view it as a boon. They had an electorate that was, a little bit checked out compared to Democrats who were highly enthused. And Republicans say all that has changed. Whether their voters can sustain that momentum for another month until the midterm elections remains to be seen.
All right, Nancy Cortez on Capitol Hill for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.